Item 10, take appropriate action on a request by Jason S. Shapkoff to rezone from mixed residential to light industrial to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 44 manufactured home spaces and 34 recreational vehicle spaces at 3618 Opelousas Street in Ward 3. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
I move to uphold the Planning and Zoning Board.
Second.
I have a motion.
With all stipulations, I also would like to add one more stipulation, if I'm in order.
Go ahead, Mr. Collins, you have it.
Close in the park with a private wood fence, 6 foot one wood fence.
Okay, we have an added stipulation that a privacy wooden fence, how tall, Mr. Collins?
8 foot.
8 foot wooden fence. Would you like it to be dog-eared?
Gotta be specific.
Dog ear.
We want it painted or just natural color?
Natural fence.
Oh, natural's fine. Okay, good.
Animal control, okay with that?
Yes. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Collins, a second by Mr. McMillan for, to discuss?
Yeah, I want to discuss on that.
Okay, Mr. McMillan.
I would like to ask if there's any problem with the fence. Would that be a stipulation that,
Could the applicant please come up?
Second.
Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Jason Shapkoff, 918 Verone Terrace, Leesville.
I hope I pronounced your name
You
correctly.
did.
I tried.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Mr. McMillan.
my question was, you heard the one stipulation with the wood fence. Is that something you could agree to?
We'd plan on putting up a chain link. Is that a problem?
We'd like to have wood fence, Steve just asked me to ask, for wood fence, and this is what
Okay.
I'm asking for.
Okay, well, we'll do it.
They'll do it?
Yes.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
very
Mr.
good.
President.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the,
President,
Mr. Collins, go ahead.
I'm in order. I have one more question I'd like to ask the owner.
Yes, please come back up, sir.
How old are those trailers gonna be that you're putting in on the park?
They're going to be new ones, all of them.
New trailers?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it,
Okay, Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, you have any further questions?
No, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Collins, a second by Mr. McMillan, to approve with stipulations and also the added stipulations of the wooden dog-eared fence. Okay, is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 11, take appropriate... Been withdrawn. Item 12, take appropriate action
So
on a
moved.
request by
Second.
Yule J. Simon Jr. to rezone from agriculture to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 4 spaces at 5291 Alligator Park Road in Ward 5. Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. Have a motion by Ms. Trimmy, second by Mr. Anderpont to approve. Any discussion? Any objections?
You might want
Mr. Scott?
to add in there to put some mayhaw vines around that.
No, but come to
Really
the
bring it into
festival.
the terrace, make it look like the
It
terrace.
is gonna be a shorter
Thank you.
festival, but come to the Mayhaw.
No offense on that. Okay, any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 13, take appropriate action on a request by Gibson Smith to rezone from manufactured home park to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 24 spaces at 6505 Nelson Road in Ward 3. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
Move to uphold
Second.
stipulation, planning and zoning with stipulations.
Got a motion by Mr. Brame to uphold with stipulations, second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 14, take appropriate action on a request by Cole Langford LLC
Move to
rezone
discuss.
from manufactured home park to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 168 spaces at 1207 Ravier Road in Ward 4. Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted 5 for and 2 against to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. Farnham to discuss and a second by Mr. Hunter. Mr. Farnham.
Thank you. Wes,
Yes, sir.
when we put the screening ordinance on them, is there a time frame that they have to get that done by, or does it have to be done prior to any occupancy or use of the property? Did it have to get it in place ahead of time?
The screening?
The screening, the 26-50 screening?
There's really not a time frame that's indicated, other than, my thought is that before we would issue a certificate of occupancy, they would have to have that in place.
I know one of our other places on Mosswood Drive,
Mhm.
supposed to get a fence. 2 years later, it still don't have a fence.
Well, they're in violation then.
I know.
Well, we need to.
We're supposed to
probably-
police that, right?
Please call his office and he'll handle it.
I
I'll be
did.
glad. We'll be
I did
glad to
already.
investigate it.
Okay, but there's no time limit, other than the fact that we probably wouldn't give them occupancy.
Certificate of occupancy.
Okay. Let's see.
Come on, Wes. Get the brain working.
There was Miss Langford, if you could come up to the microphone.
Yeah, hey.
Please state your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Lisa Langford, 806 Inwood Forest Boulevard.
The other night at Planning and Zoning Board meeting, there was at least one gentleman that was worried about being displaced from there, and you had kind of assured him that that wasn't going to happen. Is there any kind of, well, if there's any legal guarantee that you can actually give those residents that you're not going to move them out, that your intent for this park is to use the unutilized spaces for
Correct.
RV?
Correct.
Are y'all willing to put that into an agreement or something, or
Well, I told Mr. Marshall that I also live out at the mobile home park
what was
as
that?
well. I also live out at the mobile home park as well.
I know you do.
And so I said, well, if they move you, they move me. So I did not guarantee him,
Yeah.
but that's not our intention to move anybody out. But I just wanted to make it clear to everyone that I did not say, for sure, we are not going to. But we're not. That is not our intention to move anybody out. Our intention is to, where the empty spots are, put RVs.
Okay. Well,
Because we have a waiting list at the RV park.
I'm good with that. You said that on the microphone, so I'm good with that. I'll
Right.
take you at your word.
Okay.
With that, I would move to uphold planning and zoning with stipulations.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Langford. Okay,
Who seconded?
who had the second?
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Hunter?
You did second, I'm sorry.
Mr.
Did we have a
Collins.
second? Mr. Collins, I'm sorry. You're quiet over there tonight, Calvin. I said you're quiet tonight. Okay, we got a motion by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. Collins, to approve with stipulations. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 15, take appropriate action on a request by Bernadette Manuel to rezone from agriculture to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 19 spaces in the 3,000 block of Highway 3059 in Ward 3. Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
Move to hold planning and zoning board recommendation with all stipulations.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Collins, second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 16, take appropriate action on a
to
request by
discuss.
Harper Real Estate LLC to rezone from light industrial to recreational vehicle park to allow a recreational vehicle park of 145 spaces at 958 Rabier Road in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. Farnum and a second by Mr. Hunter to discuss. Mr. Farnum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wes,
Yes, sir.
when we require a traffic impact analysis, there's a formula that's going to work out and to determine if it's even needed. Does DOTD have any, does it work its way out and DOTD's involved in it? Because that intersection of Ravier Road and Douglas Parkway is horrible. I mean, every second of every day is horrible there. Do they have any say-so in whether this is?
I believe, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're within a quarter of a mile from a state intersection, they
Yeah,
have
it's
to,
within
they
a
have to
quarter
do
of a
it.
mile.
It's going to be,
So they'll have some input.
or be aware of it.
They'll have some input. I'd like to add well, I guess, am I out of order if I put in an additional amendment on this, or?
You hadn't been so far tonight. Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to add a stipulation that no access of any kind be granted from Hinch Road, emergency or otherwise.
Okay.
That's, well, I got two of them, so that's one of them.
I need to get a second on that.
Second.
I think Scott's just doing it for fun.
It's been kind of agreed to,
Yeah, that's a good deal.
but it's not formal. I
Okay.
want to make it formal.
Go.
Mr. Anderson wants to discuss.
I guess we want to do them one at a time. All right, hold on. Mr. Anderpont, you want to comment on that one?
No, I have a comment after he gets through.
Okay, it might be too late.
And I'm on, no,
Please repeat the,
Add a stipulation that no access of any form be granted from Hinch Road, which is not the major. Ravier Road is where the property faces, and there's no need to go down Hinch Road, which is a very small private road. Or it's a public road, but there's only like 4 houses on it.
and they're not
We don't
asking,
want all that traffic rolling down the
they're
road.
not asking for that. You're just trying to ensure that
They've
that
asked-
that doesn't happen. Am I correct?
Right, the residents have asked for it.
Right, but the applicant has not asked for that. That's not one of the stipulations, so you're just trying to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Correct.
Okay. And we had that motion by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. Scott. Is there any more discussion?
I do have one
Go ahead,
question.
Mr. Scott.
Mr. O'Connor, are they going to be required by the fire marshal to have another emergency entrance? If they, I mean, we've done that like on Gulf Highway, I think, off of Red McAllister. He did put another entrance, but it was only for emergency access. He's got it fenced off or something. Is that play here?
I'm not aware of any requirement by the fire marshal.
Okay, I'm good. So I'll stick with my second.
This, if I still have.
Go ahead, Mr.
This
Farnum.
Hinch Road dumps out the same exact place that any entrance, I mean, that's the only way out, it's a dead-end road.
Good, thank
You're
you.
good? Okay. Are you good? We can vote on this first, can't we?
go ahead and vote, and then I have a comment.
Okay. All right. The motion was by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. Scott. Is there any further discussion on that particular item? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Anderpont.
I want to address Mr. Farnum.
Go ahead, we'll allow it.
You've been hell-bent on fences tonight. I didn't see one in here.
Don't worry.
That's in his district.
He said he had one
That's in
more.
his district.
Wait 1 second.
Okay. I thought we were through, that's why.
No,
Oh, no, he's got one more.
Okay.
No.
I apologize, I'm sorry.
In his district, he don't want it.
Just hold that.
Okay, go ahead. Back to you there, Mr.
Back
Farnum.
to me. The next one is to,
None of us can imagine what it's going to be.
it might have something to do with dog ears. But on the east side of the property adjacent to Hinch Road, I would like to offer a stipulation that a 6-foot wood dog-eared privacy fence be installed on just the east side of the property. They can do the normal screening on the rest of it as required by our ordinance, but I would like a dog-eared wooden fence on
6
the
foot?
east. 6 foot.
You sure about the
Sure about the
height?
6 foot.
Okay.
6 foot. Oh.
We know you're sure about the rest of
Pretty
it.
don't.
Okay,
We're not being consistent, guys, come on.
You're right.
well, never mind, I can't
Every
comment.
case,
I'm just
every
running
case
the
has
meeting.
its merits. One at a time.
Okay. Did everybody understand that one? You wasn't paying attention? We'll repeat it to you.
I'll try to listen to the fence.
We'll repeat it to you again. Go ahead,
Second.
Madam Secretary.
The additional stipulation would be to add a 6-foot wooden dog-eared privacy fence on the east side of the property, which is adjacent to Hinch Road.
Is that correct,
That's
Mr.
correct.
Farnum? Okay. You good, Mr. Gilbert?
I would just wonder how much cost difference there is between dog-eared and just regular. I mean, what's the cost difference? Because we're talking about a lot of money.
I
to
think
the
you can,
people.
I think you can buy the boards that way, Mr. Gilbert.
Okay.
You can buy
All right.
it.
All right.
That's the only way it comes.
It's almost free. Okay, we had a motion by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. Scott. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries.
Now,
Okay,
if.
You have more?
I still have the floor.
all right, go ahead.
If that didn't make any sense, this probably won't either. I will make a motion to overturn planning and zoning's decision.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, it does to me, but, so, that's correct. The original motion was only to discuss. So we've discussed, and so now you're making a motion to overturn.
Motion to overturn planning and
His
zoning.
his stipulations.
Need a second?
Just for clarification, his
Second.
stipulations are in case
In case
his
it doesn't
motion
go that-
fails. So he is making a motion to overturn planning and zoning, and planning and zoning voted unanimously to recommend that it be granted. So does everyone understand?
Yep.
We're not going to grant this one.
Depending
Mr.
on how we
Gilroy,
vote.
can we have your attention?
That's the motion.
Yes.
He has a motion on the floor to overturn planning and zoning, which means we're going to deny this request.
Yes is a
On which,
If you voted.
We're on item 16. Does everyone understand?
no. So yes is a no.
Yes, I understand.
That's right. Okay.
Yes means no.
We had a motion by Mr. Farnham, second by Mr. Anderpont. Let's do another roll call vote.
Does anybody need clarification?
Harper Real Estate, didn't
Yeah.
have contact me.
If I was not clear enough, we'll have someone else explain it to you if you need it.
Start with me.
We're not voting.
Yeah, Mr. McMillan had a good point before we actually vote. Is the applicant here?
What? They didn't show up?
Okay, is the applicant here representing Harper Real Estate LLC? Okay, Mr. McMillan.
Mr. Crane,
Yes, sir.
did the applicant show up at the zoning board meeting? Have you talked to him? What was, give us an overview on what you saw with this RV park, and I'm sure you recommended it.
Oh, I certainly did. I recommended in favor of it. And yes, the applicant did show up at that particular hearing. Not sure why they're not here tonight, but.
Or did they understand that they weren't finished Tuesday night and that?
Oh, yes, it's announced.
It was clear.
It is clear and announced by the.
You know it was announced, we don't know if they understood, but
I
couldn't comment
don't
on
know.
that. Are you good, Mr. McMillan?
Well, I just think, they may have had a unanimous decision at the zoning board and didn't know they were going to run into a buzzsaw tonight. And I just have a hard time turning the zoning board without talking to the applicant, even in the need for the RV parks, and staff recommended it. So that was my question on that, so. Anyhow, thanks. Well, Mr. Crane, one more thing. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, it's a consistent land use. This, the one that you approved just previously to this was across the street, so. It's consistent.
So there's another RV park right across the street from this one?
The one that,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Last one we did.
Oh, okay.
it's across the street.
So this is across the street, basically same request. Okay, we'll come back to you. He
I
actually
could
raised
probably
his hand
shed a little
first.
light
Mr.
on
Farnham.
The park on the north side isn't a new park. It's a repurposing of an existing park, which doesn't add relatively any huge amount of traffic flow to that road. It's a very small, narrow road, Ravier Road is, that doesn't do well with traffic. And I fear that if we add this park to it as well, that the traffic's just going to be unbearable. And I don't have a lot of faith that the traffic impact analysis is going to do those folks justice. That's the meat and potatoes of it. They actually had a letter that they presented at the planning and zoning meeting that the person that sold them the property, if they would have known what they were going to put there, they wouldn't have sold them the property, because it's a family from that area. Now, they have a rental facility right next to it that has very minimal impact to that community traffic-wise. And they sold them that property zoned to I-1, that, it's either I-1 or I-2, that if they would have used it for the purpose of what they brought it there for, then they were fine with that. But they wouldn't have sold them the property if they'd have actually known that they were going to put an RV park there. So, a little clarification on the history.
I don't know if that's relative, but thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
now we have Mr. Scott.
I was just curious, can we defer till next meeting to hear from that person if it's really that big an interest to the
Mr.
jury?
Scott, you can do whatever you want to do if you can get 8 votes and you make that a motion. Mr. Anderpont.
I concur with Mr. Fornum. That is a very, very narrow road, and I'm telling you, why they're not here tonight, I don't know, but he is right on target, and it's not our fault that they're not here. And I agree with him that we just need to overturn that zoning board's decision.
So are we saying that you and Mr. Farnham agree on this?
That's the only thing we agree on.
Tonight.
I just wanted to make sure that we heard that correctly. Mr. Scott,
Then I am willing to make a motion to defer for 30 days in order to give us a chance to hear from the applicant.
There's a motion and a second on the
Oh, okay.
You got a motion on the floor already.
And a
Yeah.
second.
so we have to vote on that
Unless you pull
first.
your motion.
Therefore,
Unless they want to pull it.
right, unless they want to change, and I don't think you're going to change your mind, it doesn't sound like. Did he just change your mind?
Everybody vote tonight.
There you go. Okay, we got a motion and a second on the floor to overturn planning and zoning. Roll call.
Yes.
It's reverse roll call.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Trimmy?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Ms. Mayo?
Yes.
Mr. Hunter?
No.
Mr. Guillory?
Yes.
Mr. Farnham?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Brame?
No.
Mr. Barris?
Yes.
Mr. Anderpont?
Yes.
10-2.
Motion carries, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay, let's go to item 17, consideration of adopting an ordinance to amend various sections within Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana. The Planning and Zoning Board met on Tuesday, April 19, 2016, and voted unanimously to recommend that the ordinance be adopted. I need a motion. I got a motion by Mr. Guillory.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hunter. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 18, consideration of adopting a pro se verbal
Move on,
and
18.
resolution
Second.
promulgating the results of the election held on April 9, 2016 for authority to levy and collect a special 6.38 mil tax on all property subject to taxation within the boundaries of Waterwork District Number 2 of Ward 4 of Calcasieu Parish for a period of 10 years for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, improving, maintaining, and operating waterworks facilities, including the purchase of water within said district. Had a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 19.
One discussion. I'd just like to thank Mr. Anderpont and Mr. Barris on the motion second for something in my district. I was also in very much agreement in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, look, I'm just,
20 other people.
Mr. Fornum was taking care of District 13 tonight. I thought I'd take care of you.
And I will say, Mr. McMillan, it actually did not specify whose district is in, so we'll just assume it was an accident. 19, consideration of adopting a pro se verbal and resolution promulgating the results of the election held on April 9,
Second.
2016 for authority to levy
Move on, 19.
an ad valorem tax of 1.5 mils on all accessible property within Calcasieu Parish for 10 years to be used to fund the tax into debt for acquisition, construction, operation, and maintenance of the National Hurricane Museum and Science Center, and for maintenance and operation of all qualifying Calcasieu Parish museums. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 20, consideration of adopting an ordinance declaring 4150 Perkins
Move on,
Avenue
20.
in Sulphur, which is a Willie Garrick Center, as surplus property, no longer needed for public purposes, with the minimum bid to be accepted for the sale of said property being established at $158,000. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an intergovernmental cooperative endeavor agreement between the police jury and the Louisiana DOTD for additional mowing maintenance cycles and additional litter collection cycles within the DOTD right-of-way along I-10 within Calcasieu Parish. I had a motion by Ms. Mayo, a second by Mr. McMillan. Thank you, Mr. McMillan.
We don't need anybody to speak if y'all are okay.
Oh, okay.
We're fine.
If you have questions, that's fine.
Questions would go to Alberto. Mr. Brame, is it a comment or a question?
It's a question.
Mr. Galan, could you come up, please?
You ready?
Please state your name, address, and position with the parish, please, for the record.
Alberto Galan, Administrative Analyst, 1711 Mall Street.
What's the, I got an email, I think, from Brian, kind of breaking down the agreements. So what's roughly the cost on our two mows is that per year?
This is just for 2016. Each litter cycle and each mowing cycle cost $21,000. And so if we're doing 2 additional mowing cycles and 2 additional litter pickup cycles along the entire I-10 stretch, it'll be a total of about $84,000.
84,000?
84,000, yes.
Okay. That's for 43
44
miles.
miles, about 1,300 acres, I believe.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Brame. Is there any further discussion?
That's a hard one.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 22, consideration of ratifying the following decisions taken by President Landry on behalf of the police jury as a result of the flooding of
Vote
roadways
22.
and waterways along the western portion of the parish of Calcasieu. A, Executive Order 2016-05, which ordered that the restricted ingress and egress to the evacuation area and restricted boat traffic along the affected area of the Sabine River be revoked. And B, an extension to the local government proclamation of state of emergency through May 10, 2016. I had a motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Mr. Gilreath. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 23, consideration of adopting a resolution invoking authority under LSA RS 38.2212, which provides for a declaration of public emergency for any procurement related to the purchase of caskets, vaults, and other related supplies
Move on
for the use
23.
by the Calcasieu Parish Coroner's Office.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 24.
24 all bullets.
Consideration of rescinding the following ordinances with respect to the following properties due to the prospective bidders failing to fulfill the necessary requirements within the timeline in order to complete the sale. A, ordinance number 6215. B, ordinance number 6463, which was Decker Street in Ward 3, Lake Charles. Item C, ordinance number 6465, Sunset Drive in Ward 3. Had a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 25, consideration of rescinding ordinance number 6322.
Second.
Adopted on May 6, 2014, due to the property being redeemed. Had a motion by Mr. Collins, second by Mr. White. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 26, consideration of adopting an ordinance allowing for the transfer of adjudicated property located at 1808 Jones Street in Westlake from the parish to the city of Westlake for the purpose of expanding the city's existing water treatment facility. Had a motion by Mr. Anderpont. Oh, I'm sorry. A motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. You know I wouldn't have done that to you, man.
You would have done it if he was here.
It's in Westlake. 27, consideration of adopting an ordinance ratifying the sale of adjudicated property located at 7627 Tarpon Drive in Ward 3, authorized through ordinance number 6130. Had a motion by Mr. Scott, and second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 28, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a grant application to the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness for the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program for acquisition and/or elevation of flood-prone residential structures in Calcasieu Parish. I had a motion by Mr. Farnum, second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 29, consideration of adopting a resolution supporting an application for an enterprise zone endorsement by W.R. Grace and Company for the Advanced Refining Technologies Project. I had a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 29, consideration of a... Good? Oh, sorry. Yeah, we don't want to do one twice, do we? Consideration of
Move
item
to
30.
adopt.
Consideration
All
of
board.
adopting resolutions
Second.
for the following items as requested by the Office of Juvenile Justice Services. A, approving the submittal of a continuation grant application to the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement in amount up to $98,000 for a case manager and counseling services to assist victims of child abuse. B, approving the submittal of a continuation grant application to the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement in an amount up to $15,000 to enhance programming for at-risk youth. Sorry, youth. C, approving the submittal of a continuation grant application and any revisions thereafter to the Louisiana Supreme Court for the Families in Need of Services Assistance Program in an amount up to $60,000. D, approving an agreement between the police jury in the state of Louisiana, Office of Juvenile Justice for participation in the Title IV-E Federal Foster Care Reimbursement Program. I had a motion by Mr. Farnum and a second by Mr. Scott on all bullets. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 31, consideration of ratifying the submittal of a grant application by the Human Services Department to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for participation in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. I had a motion by Mr. Collins, second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 32, consideration of authorizing the parish purchasing agent to advertise for bids for the purchase of one half-ton pickup truck and one small SUV for the use by the Division of Engineering and Public Works. Had a motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Before we adjourn, Mr. Brame has asked for a personal point of privilege. Mr. Brame.
Thank you, Mr. President. I got a call from Susan Tyndall today on my way downtown. She kind of gave me an update on a friend of mine, a friend of many of ours up here, Tommy Coyne. He's at MD Anderson. He's been diagnosed with leukemia, and they're going to start doing treatment tomorrow. So I just asked if those that know Tommy, well, about all I can say about that. Those that know him, great guy. I've known him my whole life. I just ask that you, that everybody just lift him up in your prayers, and that he beats this cancer. So
Thank you for those comments.
That's it.
Brame. Item 33, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are
Second.
adjourned.